Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Syriana Analysis. This is a live stream. It's 8:30 p.m. here, Central European Time, and I want to talk about how did the Greens or the Green Party become a war party? They are accused nowadays, if you go on social media outlets, if you go on Twitter, for example, and type or search Kriegspartei or the party of war, you will see that all the results are talking about how the Greens have betrayed their voters because the motto of the Green Party before the election of 2021 was no weapon exports to war zones and no weapon exports to dictatorships. And I'm coming now to address how this Green Party or the self proclaimed environmentalists have betrayed their own values. To be honest, I still cannot get over the fact that Germany is going to send combat tanks to Ukraine instead of playing a mediator role and promoting a diplomatic solution to the current carnage in Ukraine. I mean, the naive in me says this is the best policy option for Germany and its strategic interest in this regard. But what if certain political figures or political parties or a party in Germany uh, are pursuing the interests of the United States instead of the interests of Germany and they prioritize the ideology or ideological aspect over um, actual factual national security interests. Now, the Greens, why I focus on the Greens? Because the Greens are the ones who said they don't want to make wars, and they are the ones who like lobbied to during the election so that they would become in a position of power, and they have become in in very, very, let's say, simple terms, I think the Greens, unfortunately, are the most hypocritical party in Germany when it comes to their values, because they preach peace but promote war and violence. They preach democracy but they support regressive groups. And why I'm saying that, just before I jump into why I'm saying that, it is because in 2021, before the elections, I told my German friends, if you want war, vote for the Greens. And they were like, surprised, what are you talking about? This is the only party that says they don't want to make wars and they want to solve the problems in a diplomatic way. Well, today in 2022, 2023, we can see which political party is actually doing the war in Germany, and those are the Greens. Now, I have a personal experience with the Green Party, unfortunately, in Germany. And it started in 2019. And in 2019, because the German mainstream media waged, I would say, a brutal media campaign against me to demonize me and my work. And they called me lots of names and tried to destroy me. The Greens jumped the wagons, none, of course, not officially as a party, but lots of Green Party members joined the wagon. And some of them have even made up allegations against me, including that I am some sort of a spy for Assad in Germany. Imagine a spy like myself who goes like almost every day on YouTube, but and I'm a public, let's say, person, and they made the allegation that I'm a spy, and they made up these allegations, and they put me into some legal troubles here. So they're really vile in this regard. They really hate the truth. They hate to discuss. They hate to debate, and instead they resort into defamation and resort into character assassination and all these vile techniques that you can ever come up with. Now, in 2019, in the German federal parliament, the Bundestag, the Greens organized an event about Syria, and they invited three or four experts on Syria. One of them, she was Syrian from the Syrian opposition, and two, three other experts, quote unquote, and all of them are against the Syrian army or the Syrian regime, call it whatever you want. So it was really astonishing to see that they are organizing an event and they invite only people from one side. and, and at the same time, they claim that they want to promote freedom of speech and differences of opinions in Syria, etc. Like, you start with yourself. Why don't you start with yourself? Why all this event is just uh, orchestrated like a theater to give the impression that all Syrians are against the government? No, there are people against the government and there are people with the government. So um, the supporter base or the membership base of the Green Party from the Syrians, those who joined the Green Party, they were also there, and all of them were against the Syrian government. And the guests are all the Syrian against the Syrian government, and all the Green Party politicians are from against the Syrian government. I don't understand, why do you do this event from the first place? Right? If you're just going to monologue the same narrative and five, six people talking about the same thing, it's ridiculous. And when I went there, and this is for the first time I speak about this, it was during Ramadan in 2019. I think it was in October or something. I'm not 100% sure. And the Syrians who are members of the Green Party and they were there, they started to really harass me there. They started calling me names. We will do this to your sister. We will do that to your mother. You know, all these swear words, which doesn't really affect me, but it only shows their true colors and their IQ levels, in my opinion. But I was there with a friend. His name is Manaf Hassan. And Manaf asked to speak in this event. And they let him speak like 3 4 minutes and they cut the microphone. I'm gonna play this video, which is already on YouTube and it's been watched by lots of people in Germany, which is a good news. And you will see how the organizers from the Green Party and from other NGOs they were like not ready to listen the other side of the story. They were laughing when Manaf is speaking about his opinion. They are mocking him, they're laughing sarcastically. So they're disrespecting someone who has a different opinion. So how can you even see these people having this sort of a behavior and think that these people are Democrats? They're not. They're not democratic. They are oppressive authoritarians. And the proof of that is that they have they're not ready at all to listen to the other side of the story. In Syria, they attacked me, they attacked Manaf Hassan, and up until this moment, for example, they are the only. So, guys, I think the connection was gone, and I'm back now. If you can hear me, please drop drop a line or drop a sentence in the chat. I'm watching you. Yeah, the image will come back just for a second, my friend. I don't know why the browser has refreshed, but I'm here again. I will just check the chat so that I see if you guys can hear me again. Yes, great. So I will share with you this video now of Manaf. He is talking in German, but there is, of course, subtitles, English subtitles. You can watch it together. Let's watch it together.
Und zwar, ich bin Manaf Hassan. Ich bin Deutscher mit syrischem Migrationshintergrund. Und bevor ich erstmal anfange zu sagen, was ich zu sagen habe, wollte ich nur sagen, dass ich es schon relativ komisch finde, dass wir hier über einen Krieg reden, nämlich in Syrien, und dabei uns schon irgendwie auf einseitiger Ebene befinden. Ich meine, ein Krieg bedeutet immer Kriegsrechtsverletzungen. Und das wissen wir alle. Kriegsverletzungen finden in einem Krieg immer statt, egal von welcher Seite. Wir haben hier aber die ganze Zeit nur eine Seite gehört. Auf jeden Fall, Ihr Motto lautet die Zukunft Syriens, Perspektiven eines zerstörten Landes. Ich bin schon auf so vielen Konferenzen gewesen und nahezu jedes Mal ging es um die Zukunft und um Perspektiven dieses Landes. Wie wollen Sie über eine Zukunft reden, wenn Sie immer nur die Minderheit der syrischen Volksmeinung einladen, die nicht mal die überwiegende Meinung des syrischen Volkes vertritt? Das tun Sie und das tun die vielen Medien. Ich war seit meiner Geburt jedes Jahr in Syrien, obwohl ich in Deutschland geboren wurde. Was ich gesehen, gehört und gespürt habe, waren ganz andere Dinge als die, die Sie uns hier erzählt haben. Zudem berufen Sie sich immer und immer wieder auf Meinungen von Flüchtlingen und andere fragwürdige Quellen. Zumindest behaupten Sie das. Bei allem Respekt, aber Flüchtlinge zu befragen, ist wie in den Osten Deutschlands zu fahren, dort Umfragen zu machen und sie repräsentativ für ganz Deutschland vorzustellen. Und Sie wissen ganz genau, was ich damit hier sagen möchte. Wenn man das in Deutschland machen würde, wären die Grünen in den Umfragen viel weiter unten. Dass Syriens Präsident darüber, dass viele Flüchtlinge behaupten, vor Assad geflüchtet zu sein, weil sie ihren unbefristeten Aufenthalt in Deutschland sichern wollen, darüber verlieren Sie hier kein Wort. Wie auch. Ich weiß aber, was die Syrer mir erzählen, und es kommt der Tag, an dem all das rauskommen wird. Sie wundern sich, weshalb das Vertrauen in die deutsche Politik schwindet. Das sind unter anderem die Gründe. Okay. Dass Syriens Präsident größten Rückhalt im Volk hat, das wissen wir alle nur zu gut. Sonst hätte er diese Krise nie und nimmer überstanden. Er hat die überwiegende Mehrheit hinter sich, und selbst wenn Sie nur 20 bis 30% der syrischen Bevölkerung hinter ihm stehen sehen, selbst dann hat diese Zahl es verdient, eine Stimme zu haben. CDU und SPD haben auch nicht viel mehr zu bieten, regieren aber dieses Land. Und im Gegensatz zu anderen Parteien dieses Syrienkrieges, wie den sogenannten gemäßigten Rebellen, die in Wahrheit islamistische Muslimbrüder und radikale Salafisten sind, beschützt er alle Minderheiten und die gemäßigte Welt.
Angekommen. Nein, wir lassen ihn jetzt ausreden, wenn er jetzt zum Ende kommt.
Entschuldigen Sie bitte, also ich muss Ihnen 8 Jahre zuhören, ist es doch in Ordnung, wenn man...
Sie sind freiwillig hier, wir haben das Hausrecht.
Genau, ich darf doch sicherlich
freiwillig hier und Sie haben auch freiwillig zuhören.
Ja, ich darf ja sicherlich weiterreden, oder nicht?
Es hängt davon ab, wie lange Sie noch reden,
ja,
weil es noch
ich brauche nur noch 2 Minuten, dann bin ich fertig.
Jetzt Zeit läuft.
Genau. So ist es auch nicht verwunderlich, dass US-Präsident Trump vor seiner Präsidentschaft und zu Beginn seiner Präsidentschaft Gleiches sagte und Waffenlieferungen hinterfragte. Er sagte, man wisse nicht mal, an wen man all diese Waffen überhaupt liefert und dass darunter viele radikale Islamisten seien. Es ist genug, alle haben genug, in Deutschland und in Syrien. Es ist doch nicht mehr verwunderlich, dass Deutschland unsicherer geworden ist. Die Situation in Deutschland ist ein Spiegelbild von dem, was wir im Ausland treiben. Deshalb fühlen sich hier auch viele Straftäter, ehemalige Terroristen und radikale Islamisten sicher und Flüchtlinge und deutsche Bürger unsicher. Und ich bin einer von diesen Leuten. Weil man Erstgenannte dort in Syrien und anderswo fördert, auch beim Morden von Christen. Deshalb muss ich mittlerweile selbst als Deutschsyrer und als moderner, weltoffener Muslim aufpassen, was ich wie und wo sage, weil ich mich für all diese Menschen einsetze. Dieses Gefühl habe ich seit meiner Geburt in diesem Land nicht spüren müssen und dank Ihnen muss ich das nun über mich ergehen lassen. Ich kann nicht mal durch die Sonnenallee laufen. Bauen Sie endlich Brücken für einen Frieden, nennen Sie diplomatische Beziehungen zur syrischen Regierung. Bauen Sie endlich Brücken für einen Frieden, nehmen Sie diplomatische Beziehungen zur syrischen Regierung auf, damit wir auch wahre Hintergründe zu Syrern haben, die hierher gekommen sind. Wir haben mehr als 1 Million Syrer in Deutschland. Das allein ist ein Grund, um zumindest diplomatische Beziehungen aufzunehmen. Für die Sicherheit dieses Landes und wenn es Ihnen so sehr um Menschenrechte...
Passen Sie auf.
Und wenn es Ihnen so sehr um Menschenrechte...
Ja, reden Sie jetzt den Satz zu Ende.
Entschuldigen Sie bitte, wir sind hier in Deutschland. Ich darf doch wohl meine freie Meinung äußern.
Ja, und ich habe immer noch das Hausrecht. Und Sie
Genau.
können jetzt den Satz zu Ende sagen und
Genau.
dann sage ich was dazu und dann kommen wir weiter im Text. Bitte.
Ich weiß,
Den Satz zu Ende.
ich möchte, der letzte Satz, ich weiß, was Demokratie ist, denn ich liebe diese, aber das, was Sie alle in Syrien veranstalten, hat nichts mit Demokratie zu tun.
Okay, herzlichen Dank für Ihre Ausführungen.
they, they they didn't let him speak for 5 minutes, and they let lots of people to speak their mind as long as they want. But when it comes to the other side of the story, you see their face expressions. They are mocking. They are hitting their microphone so that they interrupt Manaf from speaking. And then, yeah, angekommen, we understood your point. Shut the fuck up, you know. And at the end, they even accuse him of. They say, we know the talking points of the radical right. And Manaf is a left-wing person. He's a supporter of the Linke Party. He likes Sarah Wagenknecht, just like I also like Sarah Wagenknecht. And we know these techniques in order, when you cannot really counter the argument of the other side, just defame him. This is the simple way. And this is what the Greens, and those people who were sitting there, those are senior politicians, like the senior of the Green Party, not the second level or something. No. They are the. You can see these people on TVs formulating the foreign policies of of the Green Party. Anyways, like during the past few years, I'm sure you also followed the news, and you can see that the Green Party gained momentum, right? And this has happened after years of support from the mainstream media, not questioning their narratives, not questioning their intentions, their policies. They just let them speak freely, and they don't get backlash for what they say or what they do, or questioning their real motives. So they got the support from the media, they got the support from the liberal NGOs, especially those funded by none other than George Soros. And also recently, the god that we have to all worship and not question her, whatever she says, Greta Thunberg, right? Now, since I mentioned George Soros, they say it's a conspiracy theory, and we don't have to say that George Soros supports the Green Party. This is according to the mainstream media. But this article is published by George Soros, and he says, Europe, please wake up. Europe is sleepwalking into oblivion, and the people of Europe need to wake up before it is too late. If they don't, the European Union will go the way of the Soviet Union in 1991. The EU's dominant country is Germany, and the dominant political alliance in Germany between the Christian Democratic Union, CDU, and the Bavaria-based Christian Social Union, CSU, has become unsustainable, according to George Soros. The alliance worked as long as there was no significant party in Bavaria to the right of the CSU. He means on the more right wing than the CSU. That changed with the rise of the extremist Alternative für Deutschland, AfD. In last September's Länder election, which means not the federal elections, but on the local level elections, the Landtag elections, the CSU's result was its worst in over 6 decades, and the AfD entered the Bavarian parliament for the first time. The AfD's rise removed the raison d'etre of the CDU-CSU alliance, but the alliance cannot be broken up without triggering new elections that neither Germany nor Europe can afford. As it is, the current ruling coalition cannot be robustly pro-European as it would be without the AfD threatening its right flank. The situation is far from hopeless. Look, the German Greens have emerged as the only consistently pro European party in the country, and they continue rising in opinion polls, whereas the AfD seems to have reached its high point, except in the former East Germany. But now CDU-CSU voters are represented by a party whose commitment to European values, quote unquote, is ambivalent. So it's pretty obvious where lies George Soros's heart in Germany. It's not in the CDU-CSU, who ruled the country for 16 years, I think, and not, of course, in the AfD, and not in the Free Democratic Party, and not in the Linke. It's in the Greens. And he represents or supposed ideology, or the ideology of the Greens. They are also derived somehow from George Soros's ideas. Now, Greta Thunberg, before the elections in Germany, just before, a few days before the elections in Germany, she came in Berlin in a rally for this Fridays for Future. And we know that the grassroots of the Friday for Future are all from the Green Party. And the youngsters, 18, 19, 20, this range, they all vote for the Greens. And now the Greens and the Social Democrats, they want to lower the voting age, the minimum age, into 16. Why? Because between the people or the students or the pupils between this age range, they all vote for the Greens. So they will increase the popularity of the Greens through that. So if we see what Greta Thunberg is doing, for example, in Germany just before the elections, rallying in the front, on the forefront of the protests, Friday for Future, it's, in my opinion, intervention. It's a mobilization in favor of the Greens. So she mobilized the youngsters, the millennials, or those who just graduated from school or at the beginning of their fresh in the university. Those are the ones who would vote for the Greens, and she was there ready for them, and she intervened, in my opinion, in the elections. Look, those people that you can see now in front of the parliament, there you can see 99 probably percent of them, they're in this age range, 18, 24. So Greta Thunberg also supported, see, they are here mocking the CDU, for example, back then the candidate. And Greta Thunberg's presence, in my opinion, was very important in mobilizing the ranks of the voters for the Green Party. And this has happened. And accordingly, the Greens, they received 14.8% of the votes in the last elections in 2021. And they became part of the coalition government with the Social Democrats and the Free Democratic Party. Now, this was just before I jump into the other part of this video. This is Annalena Baerbock, the foreign minister of Germany, now with George Soros. This was from 2019, and they have met for in a conference in Munich. Of course, her enemies, they use this like she's paid by him. I mean, I'm not making these allegations at all, but I'm sure they get along well together. They like each other, right? They're on the same page, in the same bed when it comes to the ideological issues in Europe and also against Russia. So this was Annalena Baerbock. Now, during the election campaign, the Greens raised the motto, "No weapon export to war zones," right? And this is the photo of the motto that Annalena Baerbock raised. This is the picture of the motto. So, keine Waffen und Rüstungsgüter in Kriegsgebiete. So they don't want to send weapons to the war zones. This is their motto during the elections. And they gained a lot of votes because they are anti-war party, right? And also, beside this, she and her party, they also promised a feminist foreign policy based on empathy and gender equality. Now, if we want to see what kind of what's the meaning of a feminist foreign policy, I found this good article. What kind of feminist foreign policy should we expect from Germany's new government? And so the idea of feminist foreign policy, FFP, has established itself in the past few years, including in Germany's Green Party. But the moniker of feminist foreign policy encompasses two different approaches to foreign and security policy. One based on feminism as the pursuit of gender equality, and one that draws from radical feminist theory. The Swedish model of feminist foreign policy is relatively straightforward, focusing on the three R's of rights. R's, rights, representation, and resources. In 2021, feminists concerned about more equality and representation understand that diversity cannot be focused only on women and girls. Equity must take a broader, one could say, intersectional lens. Women are not the only repressed minority in the world, and hence an approach that considers the rights, representation, and resources of all non dominant members of societies would be a valuable and feasible extension to a quote feminist foreign policy, not included in the Swedish model. After all, if 50% of Germany's foreign policy decision makers are women, but the table is still dominated by the children of lawyers and doctors without a migration background, is that the right kind of representation? One can debate whether this approach should still be called feminist foreign policy or if, quote, inclusive foreign policy is a better term. But either way, it is an approach that by now finds relatively broad support in many democracies, not just on the far left. What forms what forms does power take? Who wields it in asking where are the women? These approaches include investigating whether women are in positions of influence foreign policy decisions. But more importantly, they also seek to widen the view of foreign policy to include mothers fleeing conflict with their children or women working at a disco near a military base. In this, the academic approach is compatible with the mainstream Swedish one. In the Green Party 2021 election, feminist foreign policy is described as having the quote, I quote, the goal of a world order in which conflicts are not resolved by the rule of the strongest, but around the negotiating table. This is what they said. This green vision of feminist foreign policy prioritizes protecting the rights of marginalized groups, cooperation and rule of law, peaceful and coordinated crisis prevention. So, the feminist foreign policy of the Greens. So after reading this, it has two pillars. One, to inclusiveness, include more women into positions of power, empower women, but probably through quotas, which I am against, and also empowering other marginalized minorities. But this is going to be simply in identity politics, and in my opinion, identity politics is also unfair because if we want to bring all the representations of the people into positions of power, how can we divide? What's the lines to divide? Race, color, language, migrants, non-migrants, white, black. I don't understand. Where does it end? Woman, man, transgender, trans, I don't know. So what's the line? How many categories can we make? And when we do all this stuff, isn't this tribalism in your opinion? I'm not a really fan of identity politics. I just believe that whoever deserves to become in a position of power becomes in a position of power. It's a very competitive field. It's not easy for anyone to be in a position of power. So this is in short, the foreign policy objectives of the Greens before the war in Ukraine. So what happened to the so-called feminist foreign policy that the self-proclaimed environmentalists vowed to pursue? One, the Greens have become the German coalition's most hardcore proponents of exporting arms into the war zone in Ukraine, whose government is suppressing and banning opposition parties, opposition media outlets, and even churches, and is siding or embedding itself with anti feminist groups, or more precisely, self identified neo Nazi groups. Is there anything controversial about that? I think we all agree on that. The second is Annalena Baerbock, who previously said she's going to support Ukraine regardless of what the voters think. Her voters, those who put her in power, she says, I will give to Ukraine whatever they need, regardless of what my voters think. I will show you the video now. She came with another absurd, I think, statement or a bombshell confession and said, we are fighting a war against Russia, which sparked a nationwide concern and condemnation here in Germany. This is Annalena Baerbock. This was in September 2022. She says, German foreign minister, we support no matter what my German voters think.
But if I give the promise to people in Ukraine, we stand with you as long as you need us, then I want to deliver, no matter what my German voters think, but I want to deliver to the people of Ukraine. And this is why, for me, it's important to be always very frank and clear. And this means every measure I'm taking, I have to be clear that this holds on as long as Ukraine needs me. We are facing now a winter time where we will be challenged as democratic politicians. People will go on the street and say, we cannot pay our energy prices. And I will say, yes, I know, so we help you with social measures. But I don't want to say, okay, then we stop the sanctions against Russia. We will stand with Ukraine, and this means the sanction will stay also in wintertime, even if it gets really tough for politicians.
So this was her saying that she will support Ukraine regardless of what those who vote her to power think, and this is her saying, we are fighting a war against Russia.
And therefore, I've said already in the last days, yes, we have to do more to defend Ukraine. Yes, we have to do more also on tanks. But the most important and the crucial part is that we do it together and that we do not do the blame game in Europe, because we are fighting a war against Russia and not against each other. Thank you.
I mean, this is a very absurd thing to say as a foreign minister, because as a foreign minister, your job is to promote diplomacy. Your job is to solve problems through diplomatic means. You're not a defense minister, you're not a chief of staff, you're not even the chancellor. You don't make decisions of war and peace. You negotiate, you promote for negotiations, you sit on a negotiating table. You need to avoid conflict, you need to avoid escalation. You're just doing the opposite. You're just doing the opposite. What kind of a foreign minister says something like this? What kind of a foreign minister who wanted to avoid wars or solve wars, conflicts through on a negotiating table, according to her own goals or according to her own charter of her party? Now they're promoting the war. They're the ones who pressured Olaf Scholz to send tanks. The Greens were the warhead in this discussion in Germany whether or not to send tanks to Ukraine. Now, so Moscow is asking the spokesperson of the Russian Foreign Ministry, Maria Zakharova, demanded an explanation from the German ambassador in Moscow on contradictory statements from Berlin on Friday. On the one hand, Germany declares that it is not a party to the conflict in Ukraine. On the other hand, Baerbock says that the countries of Europe are at war with Russia. Quote, do you understand what are you talking about? Zakharova wrote on her Telegram channel. So the foreign ministry of Germany, they they made a statement. They said, like, in short, it's like, uh, no, we don't agree with our boss. The foreign ministry made it clear that the wording didn't mean that Germany was a party to the war. Quote, international law is clear, supporting Ukraine in exercising its individual right of self-defense against Russia's war of aggression, which is contrary to international law, doesn't make Germany a party to the conflict and as enshrined in the UN Charter. But this is not what the Baerbock said. Baerbock said we are at war. We are fighting a war against Russia. So they didn't try to find an explanation to what she said, but they just made the argument that, yeah, Russia is invaded Ukraine. It's a war of aggression. We are supporting Ukraine. But this is not what Baerbock said. So whether it was a slip of a tongue or she spoke her mind or she was told to say this, I don't know. But it's very absurd to say this. And I've seen lots of backlash on social media by Germans are condemning this. And I hope the Germans would oppose this war more strongly, in my opinion. I just want to make a point here, which is funny in my opinion, since wars are a major reason for the spike in carbon dioxide emissions and a contributor to the climate emergency, right? According to the environmentalists, will the Greens care about the environment now, after sending all this weaponry and tanks to Ukraine, or are they just hypocrites exploiting people's fears to reach power? Let me know. What's your opinion? Do the Greens really care about the environment, or they're using this case to become in a position of power and then they spit in on their own values? What's your opinion? Let me know. I'm reading the live comments here. Now, people keep asking why Germany is sending the tanks to Ukraine and why it's becoming increasingly a party in this proxy war. They are already from the beginning, but they are increasingly becoming an influential part, which will not end up well with Russia. And it could end up into escalation and it could end up into clash. And this is something I think both Germany and Russia, they don't need and they don't want to. They shouldn't want, they shouldn't do it. But the United States, in my opinion, is pushing Germany to face Russia. Why? So Aaron Mate, he is reminding us of a video on his Twitter account for George Friedman, who is the founder of Stratfor. And he's talking like very honestly in this regard. What do they think about the Ukraine war, and what do they think of the relationship between Russia and Germany, and how the United States can like try to divide to create division between Russia and Germany, and why? Let's watch together.
So, the primordial interest of the United States, over which for a century we have fought wars, the First, Second Cold War, has been the relationship between Germany and Russia, because united they are the only force that could threaten us, and to make sure that that doesn't happen. Therefore, it's not an accident that General Hodges, who's been appointed to be blamed for all of this, is talking about prepositioning troops in Romania, Bulgaria, Poland, and the Baltics. This is the intermarium, from the Black Sea to the Baltic that Pilsudski dreamt of. This is the solution for the United States. The issue to which we don't have the answer is, what will Germany do? So the real wild card in Europe is that as the United States builds this cordon sanitaire, not in Ukraine, but to the west, and the Russians try to figure out how to leverage the Ukrainians out, we don't know the German position. Germany is in a very peculiar position. Its former Chancellor, Gerhard Schroeder, is on the board of Gazprom. They have a very complex relationship to the Russians. The Germans themselves don't know what to do. They must export. The Russians can't take up the export. On the other hand, if they lose the free trade zone, they need to build something different. For the United States, the primordial fear is Russian capital, Russian technology, German technology and German capital, Russian natural resources, Russian manpower, as the only combination that has for centuries scared the hell out of the United States. So how does this play out? Well, the US has already put its cards on the table. It is the line from the Baltics to the Black Sea.
So guys, this is what he says exactly. What scares the United States the most is a conglomeration or an alliance between Russia and Germany. And from Russia comes the manpower and the natural resources, and from Germany comes the manufacturing sector and technology. And if these two countries come along and they get along and they become allies, this is what scares the United States, because the only alliance that could end the American hegemony in Europe and eventually in Eurasia is good relations between Germany and Russia. This is the purely the national security interests of the United States, and this is why they're pushing the Germans on the forefront against Russia, in my opinion. And this is what also Professor Hudson, Mikhail Hudson, and I replied to him, I said, that's exactly the case. Professor Mikhail Hudson spoke about it too in 2015. I shared this with you, but I will share it again. So, because this is the exactly what he is echoing again. And you will see how the United States wants to create divisions between Germany and Russia.
What Brzezinski wrote was that America's faced with a possibility of not being able to rule the world unilaterally. And that would be a disaster for democracy. That we can't let any country's economic ability to be self-sufficient means potential military power. And in order to prevent any country from threatening America militarily, you have to prevent it from developing economically. The American nightmare, Brzezinski wrote, was that Russia would get together with Germany and with Western Europe, creating Russian raw materials, German industry, and somehow, finally, Russia would become westernized. America, under Brzezinski's strategy, said this would be a disaster because if Russia's westernized, if it becomes democratic, if Europe and Russia are prosperous, then we cannot control them anymore, and they will have no reason to be NATO. We've got to stop Russia, and the place to stop this Russian-European conglomeration is to split it right at the border down Ukraine. Let's do in Ukraine what we did in Afghanistan. Let's back the crazies. Well, most of them are the former neo-Nazi groups that have been so prominent that fly the Nazi flags.
So, guys, this is an overall presentation of the Green Party's activities in the past few years in Germany. They have become, they're in the coalition. They're a strong political party, but recently they lost a little bit some points due to the war in Ukraine, and some of the people are disappointed, those who voted for the Greens. But all in all, I think the grassroots of the Greens, from the woke people, WOKE, they would vote for the Greens regardless of what the Green is doing, even if they're betraying their own values. They would just change their attitude according to what the party says. And the proof of that is the people who gathered in front of the office of Chancellor Scholz from the Green Party to ask Scholz to send tanks to Ukraine. How can someone consider herself or himself a feminist and who is a proponent who is proposing solving conflicts in a diplomatic way and doesn't want to send weapons to dictatorships? I mean, Ukraine, do you really think Ukraine is a democracy? and and they don't want to send into conflict zones? So what happened to that? Why the people who voted for the Greens aren't saying something about it? This is the real question. So, in my opinion, the woke people are so propagandized by the media into extent that they have become zombies. And I'm not saying this as a slur. I'm saying this as a way that they are followers of a narrative. As Elon Musk says, the current thing. I support the current thing. Corona ends, comes Ukraine. I support Ukraine, and then stay home. And then I support the moderate rebels in Syria. And then I support the women in Iran. They're always just like this, the media narrative, like a robots. So, in my opinion, those people are really making difference during the elections, and they bring a party like the Greens to power, which really the I'm not gonna say the word now, the entire political atmosphere. And in my opinion, Germany, since the beginning of this war in Ukraine, I said it and I will say it again, Germany is and will be the biggest loser of this war, economically, financially, industry wise, and even in the future alliances. The United States doesn't give a damn about Germany. They have their own interests and they are pushing their allies to do the job of the Americans. And in a year or two, people will understand the gravity of the issue that happened in Europe when the Germans start permanently paying 50 to 100% more on their groceries or their gas or their whatever they're buying. When the Germans realize that their industry is not going to recover, when the Germans realize that the relationship with Russia has gave them the privilege of buying cheap gas and therefore supporting their industry, which led into cheaper prices and a booming industry and overall welfare, right? They will realize that. And but the media will always blame Russia for their attack on Ukraine. They will not give context. They will not give any explanation why did this happen. Although facts are very clear, since the 1991 NATO promised not to expand to the east, and now we can see NATO has double expanded to the borders with Russia, and NATO is basically an organization, an offensive alliance against Russia. So um, I really don't know what's going to be the outcome of the Ukraine war. It's definitely Ukraine is not going to restore the territories they lost, but I'm thinking of what will happen after the war in Ukraine, which how can the Europeans now solve this rift between them and Russia, and would the Russians even trust them again? Because remember, Angela Merkel came out and said when they agreed on the what were the names of the agreements for Ukraine? They hold it in uh, Belarus. Belarus agreement. So the Minsk agreement, Minsk one and Minsk two. So Holland, the former president of France, and Angela Merkel, the former chancellor, they both said that the intention was not to implement the agreement, but the intention was to negotiate with Russia in order to buy time so that they send weapons to Ukraine and make Ukraine ready for a war against Russia. So this is a big issue. And the Russians, naturally speaking, when you betray them like this, they're not going to trust you again. And I'm speaking on a personal level. Maybe politically later they would be, I mean, rapprochement, but I really doubt that this would happen soon. And if it happens in the next 10 years, the damage will be very big in Germany. And the German taxpayer, the people who live in Germany, they're going to carry this burden because for example, electricity bills. I'm paying now double, just like exactly 100% more. So there will be people who aren't able to pay this. So let's see what's going to happen. But all in all, what do you think about the German Green Party, guys? Do you agree with my assessment? Do you disagree? Do you think they are a democratic party? Do you think they are more authoritarian? Do you see them as a feminist party, or they're using the feminism cause to become in a position of power? Are they environmentalists, or they're using this issue again, the climate change, to also um, get more votes? And what about their position on Syria? They say Idlib is the last bastion for democracy in Syria. What about that? Let me know your opinion in the comments below. Guys, if you're new, please subscribe, hit the like button, share this video. And if you want to support my work, my independent work, there are 3 different means in the description below. You can support my work. And there are affiliate links also in the description. There are 2 books and an Aleppo soup. Some of you already asked me about Syrian products, and I found a really nice, good quality Aleppo soup on Amazon. Soap, not soup. And it's a very good traditional Aleppo soap. I just use that soap for everything, for my hair and for my beard and everything. And it's a really great 100% natural. So if you want to buy from it, I could get also commission from Amazon. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Tomorrow I will try to do another live stream. And on Monday, I have a big surprise for you. There is a former senator coming to my show on Syriana Analysis at 9 p.m. Central European Time. So take a guess, who is this senator who is coming on my show to speak about the future of the American occupation forces in Syria and the American involvement in the Ukraine war. See you next time.